This episode is brought to you by Indie Film Hustle TV, the world's first streaming service dedicated to filmmakers, screenwriters, and content creators. Learn more at indiefilmhustle.tv.
But I knew that I was going to try and shoot the entire film for $9,000.
How did you get Brothers McMullan off the ground? What made you think that you can make it? It's nuts. It's like, now you look at it, and you're like, oh well, everyone could do that. But back then, there's no internet. There was no knowledge about this, really. So how did you do it, man?
It's a crazy long story, and you just tell me to switch gears when you're tired. So,
Sure.
I'm trying to remember, because it's like I make the film 28 years ago when I start when I'm 24, I think. Mm-hmm. So coming out of film school, like you said, I'm a production assistant at a television show in New York, which basically my job was driving the van and setting up the lights. That's the extent of what I did. So I had plenty of time. It was a job that required no mental focus at all. So I spent all my time writing screenplays. At the time, one of the guys we forgot to mention is Tarantino in Reservoir Dogs.
Well, there's that guy.
Yeah. So I see Reservoir Dogs and I'm like, okay, that is what I need to write. So I probably write in my 4 years or 3.5 years out of film school, 5 feature-length scripts. 3 of them are Reservoir Dog ripoffs. I am pouring through the trades every day, trying to find or identify the agents or managers who sign first-time screenwriters. So that's who I'm sending all of my scripts to.
Smart.
All right? And every day, my dad told me something. He's like, look, there's absolutely another filmmaker out there who is outworking you. So you need to make sure every day you do one little thing to chip away at the brick wall that separates you from the dream. So if that meant, I'm going to write a scene in my script, or I'm going to write another letter to an agent, or I'm going to send my short film into another film festival, every day I made sure I did one little thing. So I write all these scripts, I send them out, I get nothing but rejection letters back. And I come to the conclusion, and this has happened to me a couple of times in my career, where I kind of recognize, well, maybe I'm just not that good. Maybe it isn't that they they can't recognize what a talent I am. Right. Maybe I'm just actually not talented. Right. Maybe I need to go back to school and learn a little bit more. Right. And at the time, I see an ad for the Robert McKee story structure class. Mm-hmm. Okay? So a lot of people might poo-poo that. No, traditional Hollywood structure is BS. 3 acts. Don't pay any attention to that. For me, it was incredible. I go there, and you learn a lot of this stuff in your screenwriting 101 stuff in film school. But again, a lot of it you forget, or if you want to be like a cool arty kind of kid, you're dismissive of that stuff. Mm-hmm. At this point, after 5 rejected screenplays, I am no longer thinking I'm hot shit. I am not dismissive of anything. I recognize I need to learn.
Right.
So I take the class, and a couple of things that he said that really struck a chord with me. One was, what is your favorite genre of film? What do you love to watch? That is the next screenplay that you should be writing. You like horror? Write a horror script. You like action, do that. And at the time, I was like a massive Truffaut and Woody Allen fan. That's all I was doing. It was all I was watching. So I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. Basically, relationship, comedy, drama, a little bit of an ensemble. I'd look at those Woody Allen films and I'd be like, okay, that's a oneer. For people, everyone listening to you, I think knows what a oneer is. But one shot without a cut that lasts almost 2 minutes of 2 people walking down a street in Manhattan talking about their relationships. Okay, I know from my film school days, that's about as easy as you can do with no money. That's as easy a scene as you can pull off compared to shooting, let's say, an interior scene in a crowded restaurant where I'm going to need to hire extras and whatever. Mm-hmm. So as I sit down, and when I leave McKee, I'm like, all right, that's what I'm going to do. I know that's the genre that I want to play in. I decided to make an ensemble because I knew from my student films that when you're not paying your actors, there's no guarantee that any of them are ever going to show up. You know, especially in New York, everybody's got other jobs. They're waiting tables. They're working in a gym. You know, you would have people just bail on you in the middle of a shoot. So I said, if I have an ensemble and I cast myself and my girlfriend opposite me, I know that even if this thing blows up, I have a short film. And that's why, and it's a crazy way to write a screenplay, but I wrote it as 4 sort of different movies. The first movie was and then I listed all the locations that I knew I could get for free. Mm. So I knew I could get my parents' house. So that was location number 1. Then I knew every street corner and sidewalk and public park in New York City. I knew from my working in news days, you did not, first of all, there was no cost to shoot there. And you would never be bothered. No cop would ever ask you, certainly in the early 90s in New York, if you had a permit to shoot. Not when New York was still a little gritty then. They could care less about 3 students out with a camera.
Right.
So I was like, so that's what the movie will be. I'll have these 3 brothers, and the one movie is the movie that takes place in their house. And then they'll each have a girlfriend in Manhattan, and those will be my other 3 short films. So I kept thinking if it didn't work out,
wow,
I could have a 25-minute movie, 50-minute movie, 75-minute movie, or a feature.
So you actually backed into this film with disaster in mind, like
totally reverse engineered the whole thing.
It's amazing. That's remarkable. I had never heard that part of the myth, if you will.
So that's kind of how I laid out the script.
Right.
And you know, so then there was an article in the IFP's old magazine, The Independent. And they did an article on Living End, Laws of Gravity, and I forget maybe one of the Hal Hartley movies. And they basically broke down those budgets. And they were, like I said earlier, one was 23, one was 28, one was like 35. And I looked at that and I said, based on my experiences with my student films, I was like, I think I can pull this McMullan script off for about $25,000. I think I can get it in the can for 25. So my old man, you know, again, my dad was a cop in New York. I am a working class kid, grew up with no money, no connections in the business. We knew a lawyer. And my dad convinced this guy to put together a limited partnership. And we were going to sell $5,000 shares to get the 25 grand. He knew a guy who works on Wall Street. That guy gave him $5,000, and that's all we raised. Yeah, so basically we raised $5,000. I convinced my dad to give me about another 4, and I basically tell him and this guy, with the 9, let me just go and shoot together sort of a sizzle reel, a trailer, and we'll use that to raise more money. But I knew that I was going to try and shoot the entire film for $9,000. That was my goal. So I set out, I put an ad in Backstage Magazine that basically says, you know, no budget indie, non-union, no pay, but we'll feed you. It's New York City, so I probably got 2,500 headshots. Mm-hmm. Through all the headshots. And then there's some, you know, great stories about, you know, how I was able to get some of these actors. But, you know, the part of Molly, the older brother's wife, probably auditioned 15, 20 actresses. And I'm thinking to myself, the script is terrible because the scenes that these young actresses were reading just weren't playing. And I'm sitting behind the camera shooting her audition, and I'm like, oh my God, like, this kid is good. Wow, maybe these scenes aren't so terrible. So Connie ends up being cast in the movie, and throughout the production, Connie was kind of like our, you know, she was our ringer. We just knew, like, okay, she's like really the super talented one here. You know, when you're acting opposite her, you better bring your A game. So we get Connie in the movie. The other actors are all, and like Connie, Nobody had ever been on a set before. Nobody had ever been in front of a camera before. And I set out to go make this film. We probably shot about 6 days over the course of maybe 3 weeks. And then I kind of run out of money. But I don't let the cast know that. And what I then do, we ended up shooting 12 days over the course of 8 months. And what I would do is I would save up some money from work. I'd hit my dad up for a little bit of money. The camera guy I was working with, Dick Fisher, would say, hey, look, I'm not working this Saturday and Sunday. I have the camera. A buddy of mine is available to do sound. Who can you get from the cast that's available? And, I would then go and say, all right, Jack and Mike are available. Let me see what scenes are still not shot. Or I'd listen. And then the other crazy thing I did was, we shot 16 millimeter.
Right.
We couldn't afford to buy any new cans of film. So
short ends.
Short ends. Well,
and 16, not even super 16, but 16 short ends.
Yeah, yeah. You get like leftover stuff from industrials. So it was cheaper for me to re-enroll in Hunter College for one class, which I think was probably, I don't know at the time, probably $300. So I can get a student ID, because for the short ends with your student ID, it was something like 25% off or something like that. So I re-enrolled in school in order to get the cheaper price on the short ends. But then, of course, when we can't afford to develop anything until we're done shooting. So 8 months after we get these 12 days done, we develop stuff. And then, from short ends, a lot of times some of that film has already been exposed. So, it made the editing a little bit easier when you knew, like, okay, well, we're cutting that scene because we just don't have that scene.
So wait a minute. So you had 8 months that you had a bunch of film reels in your apartment.
After those first 6 days, we're just, Dick says, hey, I'm free on this day. I say, great. I go buy some film stock.
Right.
I call the actors. I come up with the scenes. We go shoot those 2 days. And then it's like, all right, when are we going to shoot again? I have no idea.
But so how long were you with the movie in the can before you got it developed?
All right. So once we finished shooting, we had everything. At that point, then I go to the Duart Film Labs, and there was a great guy who ran the place named Dick Young and Bob Smith. Those were the two guys who ran it. And to their credit, they were real supporters of indie film and young folks in New York trying to make it happen. So, my dad went down with me there and explained to them, hey, I'll vouch for Eddie, but, he's got this film. Here's all the film. We'd love to get it processed. Can't pay for it all now, but if you can defer those costs, we'll slowly pay it off over time. And they were generous enough to do it.
So almost like layaway.
Yeah.
And payment plan for development. That world does not exist now. You have to find some very special people.
I mean, could you imagine, though, trying to shoot an indie film on 16 millimeter today on short ends? Like, that's why, for me, and I've heard you talk about it as well, it is so exciting right now, if you're a young indie filmmaker, that you can pick up this friggin' thing, your phone, and go and make a feature that's going to look 100 times better than Brothers McMullan. Look, hands down.
The lenses you can get, the cameras you get. I mean, I shot a whole feature on a little pocket camera, and just got vintage lenses and just went out and shot a movie in 4 days, and it got into. It looks stunning, projected at the Chinese theater on a 2K upres. Stunning, most beautiful thing I've ever shot, and I've shot things with much bigger budgets, and it was just this little 1080p camera. It was just gorgeous. So, and now there's like 4 and 6K cameras and like the little pockets, and it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So you edit, so you got everything developed on the layaway. It's a fucking great story. On layaway, then you're editing it. I'm assuming what this is.
So it gets even crazier. So we transferred the film to Beta because I work at Entertainment Tonight.
Beta SP, of course.
And they cut the show on Beta. So what me and Dick would do is, at the end of the night, like if we had a movie premiere, let's say, because we covered those kind of things, we were the last people in the office. We'd leave the side door of the office open when we left, go next door to the Mayflower Hotel, have a drink, come back into the building at midnight, and then edit till 5 a.m. using their editing bays
and without permission. So always ask for forgiveness, never for permission.
Exactly.
So all right, so you transfer everything to Beta, because I used to cut on tape as well on Beta SP. Is there a film print of this that's not a transfer from video? Did you ever go back to the neg on anything?
We did, yeah.
Eventually did. Okay, but at first you just cut together a video edit of that. And did you color grade? You didn't color grade that. No, there's no color grade. Whatever it was, it was.
Whatever it was. No sound mix, no nothing. Other than, we basically, at the time, we just borrowed all of this traditional Irish folk music from this musician named Seamus Egan. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you the story of like the great ending that happened for Seamus. But at the time, I couldn't afford a composer. And I thought, all right, we'll just use needle drops from this guy. And he was a friend of a friend of a friend. So I knew that I could get to him eventually. But at the time, I was like, I need music for the film. Right. I have no idea what's going to happen with this movie. And really, when I make the film, certainly you have the dream that maybe it'll get picked up for distribution. But as I said earlier, for 5 years, I'm sending out my scripts. I can't get even a phone call back from an agent. I'm hoping the film will be something of a calling card, and that maybe nothing else will go to a festival, someone will see it, and I'll get an agent. So we cut the film, transfer it to VHS. At the time, it's 2 hours long. We're both exhausted. I mean, I know it's still a rough cut, but, it's your first film. It's your baby. I don't know what scenes to cut. So I knock off a bunch of, VHS copies of it. And then I start the process of doing the same thing. I'm pouring through the trades. Who are the agents who are signing first-time filmmakers? What are the film festivals? What are the production companies and the distribution companies? Send it out everywhere, film festivals, a year's worth of rejections. And then the famous story is the Redford Sundance story. Right. So, I'm working at Entertainment Tonight. Redford is there to do press for, I believe it was Quiz Show. Mm-hmm. I know that, obviously Redford, Sundance, I take one of these rough cuts with me. And I have my little, 30-second spiel rehearsed so that when he gets up with his PR person, and usually you shoot these junkets in a big hotel. So I know he's going to go out the main room. I'll go out the second bedroom, cut him off as he's getting into the elevator, give him the spiel, hand him the tape, and we'll see what happens. So that's exactly what I do. And he listens to me and he says, oh, okay, great. Well, we'll have someone take a look at it. And he hands it to his PR person, and the elevator doors close, and that's it. And I think, I guess, I was kind of hoping he would want me to jump in the elevator and hear more about it. Didn't happen.
and just take the private plane to his house, and then, all that stuff. Of course.
We're on our way. Doesn't work that way. But 2 months later, I'm at work, and I get a phone call from Jeff Gilmore, who was the programmer at Sundance at the time. And Jeff says, hey, Eddie, hey, Ed, we got this movie here. It says it's a rough cut. Just want to know if you finished it. I lie. I say, yes, of course I did. He says, so it says a rough cut, 2 hours. What's the running time now? I say 95 minutes because, the Truffaut films, the Woody Allen films are all roughly, under 100 minutes. So that's what I thought. And he says, well, what scenes did you cut? And by this point now, the movie's a year old. So I've kind of seen it and I'm less in love with it. So there's a handful of scenes I know I want to cut, and then I just riff and name some other scenes. And he says, you know what? Actually, that sounds pretty good. All right, we'll be in touch. 2 weeks later, they call up and they say you're in. So now that's probably September.
So hold on a second. When you get that call, what is that? I mean, like...
I'm in the office, and all of the guys that I work with, the crew guys, they've all worked on the movie with me. They've all done sound for me. Right, So they they know, what we're doing with the editing machines. So they're all giving me high fives and everybody's cheering and I can't believe it. Holy shit.
Our little Eddie's, he made good. He's gonna go to the show.
That's exactly what it was like. So now though, I have to raise another $25,000 at a minimum to finish the film, because it's cut on beta. So I got to go back to the negative, recut it,
right? Because
and blow it up to 35. And I've never done that before. I don't know how to do that. My student films that I made, I cut myself on a little like Moviola splicer. Mm-hmm. We had to sync up your mag sound to your picture and tape it together. I was like, I can't do that for a 95-minute long movie. So
right.
I can't remember exactly how, but I'm put in touch with Ted Hope and James Seamus at Good Machine. Mm-hmm. And those are the guys who really, quite honestly, at that time, took me under their wing. They came on as producers, and they helped me. Not only they taught me how to finish a film, but Ted was really invaluable in the editing room with me. I knew 20 minutes I could cut out of the movie like that. But that last 10 was tough. And he gave me 2 great bits of advice. He goes, look, I'm telling you, you don't need the scene. And if the scene is so great, use it in another one of your films. Needless to say, the scene is never so good that you end up revisiting it. Or at least it wasn't in that case. The other thing he said is, how many times have you walked out of a movie and said, yeah, it was a pretty good movie, but there was that 20 minutes in the middle. It was a little, kind of dragged there. Because nobody ever walks out of the theater and says, God, it was a really good movie, but it was too short. He's like, I'm telling you, let's get this thing down to 95. You got a nice, breezy comedy here, puts a smile on your face, like get people in and out, and I'm telling you, they're going to enjoy it. And it was great, great advice. And that's what we did. And the interesting thing was, because we were up against the deadline for Sundance, and I might have the dates exactly wrong, it's 26 years ago, but I had to fly to Sundance for the start of the festival, and I don't know if they still do it, but they would have like a filmmaker orientation, and there were things that you did with all the filmmakers those first couple of days. And our first screening is until 4 days after that. Ted has to stay in New York because he has to wait for the blow up to happen. So the blow up, Ted grabs it that day, goes to the airport, gets on the plane, flies to Sundance. We screen the next morning at the Egyptian. So Jesus. I never even get to see the film projected until our first screening at Sundance.
Jesus Christ! And then as the legend goes, then there's was there a bidding war for it? How'd that go?
There was not a bidding war. Tom Rothman at Fox Searchlight, which was a brand new company. McMullan was the first movie they ever released. He was at the first screening. And again, the funny thing is, so they tell us, and maybe it was because of the Redford thing, there were 18 movies in, and we were the 19th. So even on my flight to Park City, there was an article listing all the movies in competition. We weren't even mentioned. So we were a little bit of the also ran. So you can imagine that. That
feeling, just are we there? Yeah. It's because you just can't pick up Bob and call Bob at this point.
Yeah. You can't even pick up a phone and do anything like that, right? Right. So anyhow, so we had a good crowd at the festival. Again, to my memory, we did not have many buyers there other than Searchlight. And at that screening, it was pretty great. It was the reaction was great. Got to meet a lot of people and a bunch of agents and managers. And afterwards, they're giving you their business cards. And got to come out to play. We got to do lunch and all that. But, Rothman was there. And that night, over dinner, before even our second screening, we sold the movie to Searchlight.
And if you mind me asking, what was the final sales for it?
We sold it for $250.
Oh, jeez. You must have been ecstatic.
We were through the roof. We could not believe it.
Jesus.
And we had some box office bumps built into that that would have gotten us to $500,000 if the movie basically doubled Clerks' domestic box office. And I think Clerks at the time did 1.2 or something like that. Yeah. So the idea that the movie would do $2 million, they thought was an absurd notion. It'll never get there.
There's no stars in it. It was a $27,000 movie. Yeah,
none of the indie movies did. None of those little ones that we talked about. They would do 400, 500, 600.
Mariachi, I think. Mariachi with Columbia Pictures pushing it and put $1 million in remastering it. Still only pulled in a couple mil, $2 or $3 million. theatrically, if I remember correctly. So it wasn't like it was a blockbuster. Yeah, I mean, but yours was.
Yeah, so then we end up making, it ends up doing $10 million.
Jesus.
Which was just nuts. But I was talking about the guys at Good Machine, and the other great bit of advice was from James Seamus. And he was like, look, Eddie, when you're at the festival, who knows if we're going to sell the movie? But I'm telling you, like those 10 days, you will never be hotter. Like there's a feeding frenzy that happens at the festival, and and we see it every year. These movies that sell for a ton of money at the festival that whether they warrant it or not, who cares? Like filmmakers are getting paid, that's a good thing. But he's like, you better have another screenplay in your hand because they will ask you, what do you want to do next? And if you could hand them a script and say, I'm doing this next, you'll get that thing greenlit in a hurry. So I quickly wrote basically what I thought was a funnier version of Brothers McMullan because we didn't really think we would sell Brothers McMullan. No. So that movie was She's the One. And, Rothman basically said what Seamus said he was going to say. What do you want to do next? I said, I want to do this. Here's the script for She's the One. And within a week, that was greenlit. So, I go out to LA for the first time in my life as a guy who sold a movie to Fox Searchlight. And now I've got my second film greenlit with a $3 million budget.
I remember working on that short when I was Dolly. It was the Dolly group for whatever reason. And that's when I read Inconvenience, or the first draft of Clerks.
My listeners know that you kind of got your start in Clerks, working with Kevin and getting that whole thing going. I have to first tell you, when I first saw Clerks, because you and I are similar vintage as far as age is concerned. So
you're looking at, I'm about to, what's today? Friday. On Friday, I'm a week. So today's February 24th. So March 5th, I turned 50. I'm
wow. So
yeah,
you're just slightly a bit older. I'm 46. So we're in similar, we've crossed over the same bodies, in the business. So, when I first saw Clerks, I was so upset because I was working in a video store. I was just like, it was right in front of me. Why didn't I think of this? It was like literally, I worked in a video store for 5 years, and I was just like, God damn it, man. I was so upset at myself. I'm like, why hadn't I thought about that? But you guys did it. So how did you get involved with Kevin? How did you get involved with Clerks and that whole kind of crazy story?
So, I mean, I backing it up. It's like I was probably, I guess I was like 14 or 15, or even younger than that. It was like Raiders of the Lost Ark was the movie I saw, where it wasn't just that I was like, oh, I love this movie. It was more that I was like, oh, how do people do this? Like, that it's a constructed thing, like I became aware that it's like, oh, people made it. It didn't just appear out of thin air. And so then I started getting really interested in film, and then, ultimately went to the Vancouver Film School because I was living just outside of Vancouver, BC. So, and so Kevin and I both just sort of independently end up getting in. We're in the same class. It was like the 25th, 26th, like they were numbered. So the school had just opened, and we both went because our grades weren't that good. And so it was like, this is a tech school, right? You just go, it's 8 months, you're in and out. Kevin, so we arrived there together, we kind of become friends. But Kevin is the one who came with a plan. Like Kevin had already sort of, he was working in a convenience store and the video store back and forth. And so he kind of went there with the intention of like, I'm going to learn how to make a movie and then go back and make the movie with my friends. And then we became friends. And so it became like around halfway through the program, it's like at the 4-month mark, it was like 10,000 all in. And I think at the halfway mark, it's like you had to put in your next 5,000. And Kevin was like, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to go home and get my job back. And you stay and finish the term out and learn how to learn whatever's left to learn. As far as like, all that was really left in the back half of 4 months was we switched into doing these sort of narrative 16 millimeter shorts. So you worked on like 2, I think, or 1. No, you just worked on 1. And so Kevin left to save the money to put towards the movie. And then I stayed, and that's when Dave Klein was in our class, who was the cinematographer on Clerks. And we had kind of known each other, but as soon as Kevin left, like then Dave and I started hanging out a lot. And so by the time we graduated, so it was like March of 92, we start class. October, we finish. And Dave and I are friends. And then after that, we started making like, there's a bunch of people, there's like a community of like people who'd gone to the school and they were making short films outside of the program. And so I was editing one, I was the editor on one, and I was the dolly grip during the shoot, and I was cutting it at night, and Dave had shot it. And so we were all just kind of around, but Kevin, in the meantime, I remember working on that short when I was the dolly grip for whatever reason. And that's when I read Inconvenience, or the first draft of Clerks. So that was like probably November of 92. So we meet in March of 92. By November of 92, I have the draft for Clerks. And then from there, we were going to shoot earlier, but then there was a big flood, and Kevin's like house was flooded, and
right.
His car was flooded, and so he couldn't do it. And so we postponed it till March. And then I was prepping in the morning to rent equipment. Like I was getting up like really early at like 5 a.m. to call houses in New York to rent camera equipment. And we had sort of talked to, I mean, there's a lot of stories, but we had talked to one DP who was in New York. He was an older guy who had his own pat lighting and et cetera, et cetera. And I remember Kevin and I was talking, and like, this is totally, I mean, look, it all worked out. So, but I remember being like, I remember distinctly feeling like, oh man, like if there's that one guy who knows everything and we're just complete neophytes, it's like, it kind of, we both were a little bit like, it feels wrong, like, or it feels like, it just felt like the wrong mood to have this person who was always like, you can't do that, and you have to do this, and you have to do that. I think we were just selfish and scared.
Ignorance was bliss.
Yeah, it truly was like kind of like, and then Dave, and we knew Dave, and we're like, well, let's have Dave, let's bring a lot of people who know nothing together.
So, I mean, on paper, this sounds fantastic as an investment. So we were talking of, it really does. Black and white movie about clerks, no star power, cost about $27,000 if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. First time DP, really. I mean, other than shorts, first time director, first time producer, first time cast. Essentially, you had no
actors.
First time. So again, on paper, solid investment.
Everyone lined up.
Everyone's just like, how much money do you need?
Yeah. They were like, they wanted to give us $1 million, and we're like, no.
No.
We only want 27,000.
And I came back to my brother and Tiger and said, we need to have an opening scene that knocks people's socks off. Like, they need to know when they see this opening scene, the rest of the movie, this is what you're in for.
You guys are developing Menace to Society, so then you, from my understanding, you got to set up over at New Line. How did Menace to Society even come about?
Well, it was interesting. It was like my brother and I had an idea at 15 that we wanted to do this kind of hood story, but our perspective is we wanted to have it be told from the point of view of this kid that just got corrupted by nature versus nurture, and he got corrupted by both. Basically, right? At the time that we got to the age where we're about to start doing music videos, we were at a production company that we were signed to called Underdog Film, which was a black-owned film company in LA. And they were doing a music video for the Boys in the Hood soundtrack. We had saw the Boys in the Hood trailer, and we're like, uh-oh, it's over. Somebody already beat us to it, right? Mm-hmm. We were in the production company at the time. They'd insert the clips into the music videos from the movie back then, they had 2 3/4-inch tapes. The movie was split in 2, and this closet room with a TV and a playback thing. And we decided after work one day, let's just go watch this thing to see before we give up on our dream, So we watch it, and halfway through, we're just looking at each other going, this is really spoon-fed. This is it's weak compared to what we want to do, like stylistically and thematically. It's not as potent as what we want to do. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, we had saw James Olmos' American Me, which blew our minds.
Yes.
And that actually made Menace to Society a harder movie, because we saw that and we're like, oh shit, we gotta at least be where that movie is. So my brother took the lead in developing the script while we were 18 doing these music videos. And he would show me like 10 pages or 20 pages, from our friend Tiger Williams. And at the time it was called Rampage, right? The script was called Rampage.
Nice.
And there was no liquor store opening. There was no videotape that was going throughout the movie. And at the time I started experimenting with marijuana. We were late to marijuana, like we were 18 or 19. And again, I was really introverted, shy, and socially awkward. So I started reading the script as more and more pages came in. And then I was smoking one night, went to my room, and I came back to my brother and Tiger and said, we need to have an opening scene that knocks people's socks off. Like, they need to know when they see this opening scene, the rest of the movie, this is what you're in for, basically, right? And so I pitched them the opening scene, not knowing that would be a through line throughout the script, because that was the last thing we added, before the script was complete. Now, once we completed the script, we had 2 line producer friends from music videos. One guy was Ruben Mendoza. The other guy was Darren, who ended up being the producer. I forget his last name now. Darren Scott, who produced one of our Tupac videos. Okay. So we hand them both, my brother hands them both the script and says, whoever can get it set up, you could be the producer, naively thinking that that's how producing works. It doesn't. We get an agent who then moves to CAA. We still haven't done anything yet except for a few music videos. And she says, New Line read your script, but they don't want to do that. I want you to go in and meet with them. They want to talk to you about Last Dragon Part 2. So on the way over to New Line, on our first meeting with an executive, my brother pulls up the car to a parking meter and he says, listen, fuck that. We're not doing Last Dragon Part 2. We're going to go up there and repitch Menace. So we go into the office and do just that. Not knowing that an East Coast exec had read the script and loved it, which put pressure on the West Coast exec, right? And Bob Shea, who was the owner and founder of New Line, found out about the script. People were excited about it, and the wheels were starting to roll. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to put the script on Weekend Read. And I think it was a Thursday or Friday, we got a call that, Bob Shea and everybody's going to read it this weekend, but he hears you guys did an episode of America's Most Wanted. And he saw your music videos, but he wants to see that episode of America's Most Wanted. And we're like, fuck, our career is already over. Because we did this episode, and it was horribly acted, some janky direction. And it was something that me and my friends, we would all just clown, and we'd say lines from it. Like, we spoofed it. It was so bad, right?
Right.
We would just clown it daily, and we buried it deep inside our conscious, whatever. Now Bob Shea went to see this, we're at the kind of apex of us maybe making it in this business. I'm like, it's over. Mm-hmm. So come Monday, he said, read it, and he cried, and he wants to make the movie. He obviously already saw America's Most Wanted, so we got over that hump, and that's how it started.
That's awesome. And then I know from my research, I found out that you guys were going to have Tupac in it at one point, right? And then it kind of
he was actually cast in it.
And then it kind of fell apart.
Yeah, he was disruptive in casting. No, excuse me, rehearsal. And my brother had a few confrontations over it, and this is before. The thing about Tupac, to be fair, is that he was never threatening when he was by himself. He was $150. We were about 200 at the time, right? Mm-hmm. And contrary to popular, opinion of what happened between us. Well, he buried a hatchet with us, shortly before he died. But there was never a beat down by him or nothing like that. It was 15 guys,
Right.
But my brother was ballsy with him. My brother stood up to him, and at a certain point when he confronted him, he said, it looks like you want to knuckle up. And my brother always gets this smile on his face when he knows something's about to go down. And my brother has also confronted each and every one of our bullies in childhood at one point or another. He just stands up to him. So let's go, right? So he saw some bullying going down, and he just like, oh, you're trying to knuckle up. And my brother stood up. And Tupac's like, nah, call my manager. So my brother called his manager and said, I don't know what to do. He's being very disruptive. We think part of the reason he was disruptive is because he wasn't in a starring role at the time, and he'd just come off with Juice, and he was doing he finished John Singleton's Poetic Justice. And he just wasn't happy with the role that he accepted that he was supposed to do, which was the Muslim role, which was a very small role, right? Bob Shea and New Line had told us that, we need platinum rappers in the movie. Tupac wasn't necessarily a platinum rapper at the time, but we had Too Short and other people in the movie. So we were scared of losing a movie if we had a problem with Tupac in one way. But my brother knew that it was like a situation that couldn't be resolved because he was so disruptive, partially because he didn't know his lines, partially because he wanted all the attention on himself, which a true star, that's how they are. And he's a true star. I can't deny that. So my brother had to go tell Bob Shea at Glenn Ross premiere.
Wow.
He goes to this premiere. Bob, we got a problem. And he tells him, and Bob says, fire him. And my brother's like, really? Will you allow us to do that? He said, yeah. Your brother called up the manager. Yo, it's over. We got a movie to make. We can't be fucking around with this shit, right? It broke on MTV News, and it just became this wild story. But it wasn't anything we would have done differently. The way my brother handled it, because again he was more the producer social type back then. Mm-hmm. He couldn't have handled it better. The way Tupac responded to it was not a good thing. And we to this day we make a project and we see something disruptive. It's one thing I always tell young filmmakers, like, don't let the cancer grow. Whether it's a crew member, whether it's a cast member,
amen.
Whether it's you, if you let that cancer grow, it will fester and it will permeate everything. Yeah, it will infect everything. Kill it in the crib.
No, without question. And it could be something as simple as a first AD, a camera op, and all the way to the lower. I've even had sound guys who just had such a bad attitude.
I've had that. I've had operators. Well, when I was younger, I didn't know how to deal with it. Like me and my brother both, he was more vocal, but we would both bury it and basically let it fester. And then it would explode in a different way that's not healthy, Right. And as I older, you learn how to be a leader of 150 people, If you're paying attention, you learn how to be better at that, right? And what I've learned is like you got a ball, grow a pair of balls or fallopian tubes, whichever, and go corner that person. Just go, yo, what's up? Because if you fuck around, you're gone.
Yeah.
And then the person, if they're real dicks, they're gonna keep acting up, and then you gotta make an example out of them.
I had a first AD, man. Day one, he was older than me, obviously a frustrated director. Started giving me crap. And I was paying him. I was my production company was doing the TV show. And I'm like, after day one, I'm like, dude, I'll do this without you. Like I can run my own set. I don't need you. And after that,
you were talking about something too. The age thing is something we ran into a lot.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, of course, because you were like, especially back then. Like nowadays, it's even a little bit more accepted because now everyone, if you're 20 something, you could be directing Black Panther. or something like that, where back in the 90s, that old school mentality, man, it was, if you had a 45-year-old or 50-year-old and had 22, and I'm working for a 21-year-old director, oh man.
We there would be several occasions when we walk on the set and the grips would go, here, kid, put that sandbag over there, not knowing we were the director, right? And then at lunch, you're like, we're so sorry we said that. We're like, man, whatever. We look like young punks, even on that movie, there were actors talking shit to us in our first movie. Like, this movie ain't shit. It ain't gonna be shit. You guys aren't shit. Like, we're like, fuck.
This is rough. I just want to tell stories.
yeah, it's like, this is rough. But the one thing we had was each other.
Yeah, man, that must be awesome.
If it was just one of us and you're getting picked at like that, and you don't have a partner to say, compare notes, it would have been rough, And my brother was a really great fullback, for me, because I was quite sensitive and, inward and all that other stuff, and it took me a while to grow into expressing myself and learning how to lead a crew and doing the right thing, and, we also don't like screamers and yellers and tension,
Yeah.
We just don't deal with that, we've had our little outbursts every once in a while, but we're usually going against other dickheads, like if there's a dickhead, we can pull our dickhead card out too, And we also learned about ego in this business too, which is, right. You hear stories about like directors having an ego or an actor having an ego, and then you may meet that person that the story's out about, and you're like, oh, this person's actually a cool motherfucker, right? He's not the traditional horror story that you've heard about. And then we realize that person probably used their ego to suppress another ego. So the horror story about them was about suppressing another ego that was out of control, right? Which you have to do sometimes. And I think that's the only time it's healthy to, in a collaborative sense, use your ego. Is, mine only comes out when I feel like somebody's acting out and their talent level is not at the same level as their ego. The scales of talent justice is way off balance. And I'm like, well, this motherfucker right here needs to get verbally smacked, and then my ego comes out. It's like, why are you wasting my time, And that's a healthy way to use it, I don't know. They're just all these little tricks you learn, with people and groups and, group think too. It's like, a production is like an organism. And it thinks in this one way, right? And it doesn't matter if you're Tom Cruise or Tom Hanks. If they hate you, they hate you.
Oh yeah.
And they're not going to bend over backwards for you and go an extra hour for you. If they as a group think don't like you, you're done.
Yeah. Just ask George Lucas on the original Star Wars. Like they're like, nope, it's tea time. I don't care about your damn big gorilla thing over there.
And they always, the American filmmakers are always quick to talk shit about the British.
Yeah.
Those are some of the hardest motherfuckers on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Give them their tea time. The one thing they don't do, those Brits, is they don't come to you pushing scripts on you and shit like that. They're like, well, you want the camera gov, and they're specialists at their job, and they take pride in, the grip is going to be a grip, the operator's going to be an operator, right? They don't have delusions of ambitions beyond, they're professionals.
Oh, so in other words, so you mean to tell me that occasionally the grip will bust out a script and go, hey, Albert, listen, man, I know I'm here just gripping, but I got this.
Oh, the American ones, of course.
It's like that great movie Living in Oblivion, where the DP is always walking around with a script in his back pocket, trying to cast the star of this little independent film. The difference between an American actor and a British actor too is an American actor will come up to you and say, it might be a bit player. He might just go, or she may go, I'm standing here on the street corner and I'm looking at that window over there. I think you should get a shot of the window, and then turn around and get a close up on me, and I'm sitting there, all right, and just walk away. Right? A British actor would never do that. Interesting.
They know their lane. It's one thing to be collaborative and like, my character, I think, needs this, or, sure. Whatever, right? You're telling me which way to put my camera? Yeah, we got a problem.
And, trust me, I know that. But isn't it funny that everything we're just talking about, this is not a chapter in film school. Like, this is not something that's talked about ever, about the politics. There should be a course called The Politics of the Set.
Oh, yeah, you're so right.
I slept under the editing console. On 1-inch stacked reels. That's how I'd sleep, and just cut, dude, just to get this goddamn thing done. So I thought, if not now, when?
Your first feature was called Bullets, Guts, Blood, and Octane, which arguably was arguably one of the best titles to come out of the 90s. I have to say.
Well, I hope so, dude. maybe not the best film to come on the night. But again, brother, going back to this is a movie that I was in. We made for like $7,000. It was designed to kickstart everything. I think, unfortunately, we got caught in the massive wake that Tarantino had created, and no one could do a crime genre film of any kind without the immediate supposition being, well, it's Tarantino, as though that genre never existed prior to Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. So that always kind of rankled me, because there's Used Cars, Bob Zemeckis in there, there's Glenn Ross, there's all these kind of influence, Warren Leonard, there's all that shit. But watching it now as a much older guy, I think the writing is great, and it's funny, and it's goofy, and it's amateur, but it works. And it's like, it just never, I never thought it got a fair shake. And I think I've had one of those careers, dude. I think it's always been, and you sit here and go, well, I never got my due. It's not about getting your due. I just always think I was misunderstood in certain ways. And it took movies like The Grey to go, oh, I guess the guy is serious about, it's like, I just don't like to do the same shit. You know what I mean? And it's like, and I think sometimes that, because it's not, I've always said this, I'm not interested in making movies. I don't give a shit if they say anything about me in 50 years. It's like, I want to make stuff I enjoy and stuff that, that for whatever it is, but I'm certainly not curating a career. I'm like, I think about it very much. I came from, a lower middle class, middle Michigan kind of, and you're lucky to be, hey, you pulling a paycheck doing this. I mean, my mother says to me, well, honey, at least I'm glad you got your degree. It's like, Mom, I think I'm okay.
You make this film, and from what I understand, you shot it on 16 and edited it on video. So I'm assuming you edited on 3/4, or did you do?
No, brother, I edited on M2, the Panasonic M2, which was the cheap. Wow. Oh, I know, dude. The horror. I know, bro. Bro, you look like you just saw a photo.
Because I actually did some research, and is it true that you edited on the Pinnacle DVE?
No, brother, I edited on. It was the Fast. The Pinnacle, the Fast. It was the precursor to the Avid. But I'll tell you this, dude. To me, to this day, that interface is still better than Avid's. It just is, because you could drag and drop. You could do all this, which you can on Avid. But to me, and again, dude, I'm cutting right now with Kevin. I've cut in every one of my films. I've cut sequences or scenes, or I've done because I cut this movie, Blood and Guts. I cut it all myself. So, I still understand. I love editing. To me, is like writing, right? It has that same kind of effect. But it's never. That was so, the ease of use on that was so great, and so. But it was. I don't even know if they're still in business, dude. It's like, no, if they're still making.
I think they are. Like when I
5-to-1 compression rates, and it's like. Dude, it was just, and all, brother, listen, when you just think this is the way people are going to see the movie, you're not, oh, fuck, make it black and white. I don't care. Who gives a shit? And again, dude, the theory being creatively that shit ceases to be shit if it's moving fast enough. They're not going to realize they made it for no money. The performances are, a bunch of kids, blah, blah, blah. So it was, you just had this kind of devil may care attitude about the editorial thing. And then they go, oh, now back to film. Oh my God. So I had to go, everything had to go back to be transferred. And then I had to have an IP, then I have an IN, then we had the negative cutter, and then we had, oh my, check. It was like, oh my God. And this is back, dude, photochemically, this is how you had to color films. You didn't have the Da Vinci. You didn't have couldn't go into like, what's your luck? What the fuck? It's like, there's too much cyan in this, there's too much magenta. And, but you did it. You went and screened reels. So it was a totally foreign, but yet I'm glad, because I got the tail end of that. And it was great education that I wouldn't have had. Like with the last, with film school, we're still cutting on a camera. It's like, oh, okay, but that's gone, bro. That's like,
no, that's nuts.
But I'm glad I experienced. Yeah.
No,
crazy.
And the other thing I heard from you is about the story about Blood and Guts was that you actually used all the TV station you were working at, all their gear and all of their lights and anything you can grab a help without their kind of permission, or they frowned upon it.
The guy I mentioned earlier, Andy Crittenden, gave me permission. Then he took a job at Fox. Well, I asked for forgiveness and permission now, because I'm not going to go back to the GM of the station. And then literally that Saturday, as we're shooting, the GM of the station walks into the conference room where we all are sequestered shooting this scene, and basically said, well, I hope somebody's making money on this. But he never shut me down. Elliot Trushinsky, who's a really lovely guy. And years later, I'd done Smoking Aces, I was at this really kind of nice Mexican restaurant in Sacramento, and my kids were still up there. and I saw him and his family having dinner, and I bought him all dinner, and he had no idea what the hell was going on. And he came over, and he was so lovely, but I'm like, hey, dude, that was a brilliant thing you did for me, and you never like shut it down. You never you could have, and you didn't. So I was dancing between raindrops, dude, on that particular thing. But yeah, dude, it was all brother. M2 machines, digitized. Would tell my then wife on a Friday, I'll see you Monday morning, or Monday night, and I would work through and bring a change of clothes. I slept under the editing console, on 1-inch stacked reels. That's how I'd sleep, and just cut, dude, just to get this goddamn thing done. So I thought, if not now, when? And if not now, never. You know what I mean? It's like it was one of those deals.
And then so you do this film for $8,000, right? Then you get into Sundance in the midnight screening, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you get into Sundance, and I see the trailer, which is so brilliant. That trailer that you edited for Blood Guts is like, how did an $8,000 movie get into Sundance? And you just boom, boom, boom. And I was like, man,
we did all our own marketing, dude. We did all this kind of guerrilla marketing. Yeah. And by the way, dude, like my buddy, like Kevin Hale, looked like he's smuggling heroin through the airport and was selling kids to gypsies. I mean, it's crazy, dude. We went way over the top in these little kind of vignettes, but it was like those that vibe was what we needed to have happen. And it was because we were just lucky to get anything, dude. It was like, bro, the idea that it was going to play theatrically was nuts. So that in and of itself was just a gigantic victory for us. And everything else after that was great. And I thought the first screening at the library at Sundance was kind of a disaster. It was fine. But I thought the second screening, which was in, God, where was that little area where it was the Holiday Village Cinema, I think. Mm-hmm. That one was a bunch of snowboarders, and they loved the movie. It was a very different crowd. It wasn't the film crowd. It wasn't the cineasts. It was kind of like the guys just coming off the slopes of the snowboard. They loved it. And so, but it was the Sundance experience. It was like, that was at that time, brother, and I don't know if it's the same now because Sundance is a very different place. That was the goal, man. That was the Sundance Film Festival was it. You got there and you were on your way. I think that was the first time my mother saw Robert Redford in a restaurant. She's like, oh, I think maybe, you could make something of this, honey. It's like, yeah, Mom. I think, we'll see. It's like, that's the goal, Mom. That's the goal. I don't want to move furniture the rest of my life. So yeah.
And the funny thing is, like, my dad still doesn't know what the hell I do. Like, I took him on set one day on a spot. Yeah, they're like, do you make money? You're obviously doing well enough to own a home in Los Angeles. So whatever you're doing, keep doing it.
Have a family. You have 2 girls you're taking care of, and yes, right. You don't seem to be engaging in high-end bank robbery, and right. So yeah, dude, whatever you're doing, keep doing it, kid.
Yeah, because that generation, that generation's
like, hey, the less I know, the better.
Like it's so funny because that generation's all about like if you don't work in a factory, if you don't bust your ass for 9 to 5, it's not a job.
Oh, dude, it's not a job. Like, what are you doing? No,
writing.
I don't understand it.
Writing. What?
Wait, what?
What?
Writing. Write what? Yeah.
I write. I don't get paid to write.
Gorilla's got this great. He's got this great. Gorilla's got this great story about he and his dad standing on the patio of his place in the Palisades, and his dad's like, he's like, "You got this from acting?" Got this beautiful kind of sprawling pad in Pacific Palisades. It's like his dad, from acting you got this? No, I've been knocking off 7-Elevens. Yes, from acting I got this. It's like, but dude, it's a generational thing, brother. It's a generational
it is, and I think the generation coming up behind us, like our daughters and that they are so aware of everything. Like they know about being online, and they know about followers, and they know about building content, and they are so much. They're just exposed to stuff that we weren't exposed to. So
they are. And I think that's the thing, is to try, for me at least, to slow that down, because I'm so terrified that overload is very real. It's very real, and it's scary, and it's kind of it's pervasive, and I can't
agree with
any
you.
other.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you 100%, and I try to do everything I can. But then they see what I do, and and they're just like,
it's exciting. Yeah,
they're just like, they Googled me the other day, and they're like, Daddy, like, people know who you are. I'm like, look, man, I am nobody. In the grand scheme of the world, I am nobody. but yeah, there's a few people who.
Bro. Yeah,
I'm not. Like, I'm not Obama. Like I could walk the street. Like everybody in the world knows who.
Dude, think about this, bro. Think about if you couldn't. That's always because I've watched that happen to friends of mine. Listen, I watched it happen to Chris Pine. I watched it happen to Bradley Cooper. I watched it literally happen to them in real time where they couldn't be themselves anymore, and like they had to deal with being constantly bombarded and constantly inundated with requests for autographs, requests for pictures. I remember sitting in Dorchester having dinner with Bradley Cooper, and this woman comes up and says, "Can I get your picture?" He says, "Oh, honey, I'm right in the middle of." He's trying to be cool. I'm right in the middle of a meal. She goes, "When are you gonna be done?" And just kind of posted up there. I'm like, "See, I don't have the time." I'll put this fucking fork in your hand. How about that? And then it's like, are you out of here? Get the fuck away from the have some respect.
I know, dude. It's insane. But you're right.
I've seen someone's, like, come on, man. It's just ridiculous. But,
it's insane.
Yeah, dude. I wouldn't know what to do. I wouldn't. I get recognized once in a blue moon. It flips me out, dude. It flips me out.
Yeah,
it does.
Yeah, when I was talking to Albert, he was Albert Hughes. I was talking to him the other day on our show, and he was telling me, he's like, dude, I was at Planet Fitness, and some dude walked up to me. He's like, hey man, I got a script. Like, he's on the treadmill, and he's like, well, I'm in the middle of working out. He's like, all right, and he waited. He's like, I'll wait till you're done, and he just stood there next to him.
Dude,
and Albert was like,
say, man. Go through CAA. I can't, you got to go through the agency. I can't, because if I read one page and somehow I put, a guy walks into a store, I ripped your script off. It's like, okay, you can't do that.
It's insane. It's insane, dude.
And I get it, brother. I get the hustle, man. I do. I get it. But
it's a right way to do it. But there's a right way to do it. Like, look, man, I literally got the word hustle on my shirt and on my hat. My whole brand is about hustle. But I've been yelling and screaming from the top of the mountain. I'm like, look, guys. There's a way to do this, and there's a way to approach people, and there's a way to do that hustle and respect it, as opposed to like calling somebody at their house or dropping off a package at their house or there's ways of doing it. And
dude, it's creepy. I don't want you coming near Mike. Don't do that. It's like that's not for public consumption anyway. I don't want you to know where the fuck I live. It's like, come on, man. Any more than you would want me to know where you live. It's like, it's creepy, right? It's like, so. And I get it, dude. Listen, part of me is always cut with this kind of sympathy of, all right, I get it, man. It's like, it's brutal. It's trying to get your stuff. But the idea that I'm just going to jump right into your screenplay and change your life, and it's like, I'll say, how many scripts you read? First script, write another one. What are you waiting on? Don't sit around, the coffee shop waiting for this one to take flight. Write another one and work. And you got to work them. You got to multitask these things. You got to
absolutely.
Keep them all, keep all of them moving and shaking in a different. You have to. You have to. I still have to. Everybody does, and you should. And I like that. Experience. I'm used to it. You know what I mean? And it's comforting to me, as opposed to just having stuff kind of float in and here you go.